We are here with another episode of Before You Buy, that show where we give you some straight up gameplay and our thoughts on the latest games releasing. And today we're talking about not the latest game releasing, we're talking about Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2, because it's getting released on yet another console. This time it's Nintendo Switch, but honestly, it's a slow month, and we've never really talked about this game at all, so we figured why not? But starting off with the first game, Resident Evil Revelations feels way more like the 3DS game it first was many, many years ago. It's way simpler, it's a bit less challenging, and just generally smaller scaled. It's better if you play that first, like kind of like an introduction. That's not to say it's a bad game though. You know, the Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6 over-the-shoulder shooting gameplay that we have here is still really, really fun, and it works pretty great on the go. I think that was the initial appeal of the game on 3DS, and now we have it again here. It's almost better suited on the go, as levels can be somewhat kind of short and separated by like a TV show style previously on video that starts at the end of every new chapter. This doesn't feel as good when you're playing it on your couch in front of a TV, but it's still cool and it's still different. Revelations follows Jill Valentine and her partner working the BSAA stuff when a new nasty virus is discovered, and you quickly fall down another rabbit hole of mystery and intrigue. Look, it's all B-level Resident Evil stuff. Both games kind of feel like the CGI movies, but it's interesting enough to keep you playing, especially with the fact that it's paced in a pretty complex way. Perspectives shift often to other characters like BSAA agents like Chris Redfield and his partner, who I absolutely hate. There are some really annoying characters here. Oh boy, some of the dialogue isn't that great, but if you've played most Resident Evil games, notice nothing here will really feel too out of the ordinary. But playing various characters does still keep things varied and makes up for a lack of huge environment variety. And I will say, even though there may not be the biggest variety of environments, they are pretty interesting to play through and pretty claustrophobic, the Jill Valentine levels especially. Overall, the game is fine. Fans should play it. It's good action survival horror, and it even has a couple scary moments. There are a lot of cool BOWs to shoot, but the story is just kind of whatever. It's more of that big conspiracy, government convoluted story stuff. But when you're just walking down spooky hallways and shooting monsters, that's absolutely where the game is at its best, because it can feel claustrophobic and sometimes challenging, and just a decent playing Resident Evil game. Now, Resident Evil Revelations 2 has far more mechanics going on and feels like a beefier game. I don't know for sure if it's a better game, though, because it makes a lot of gameplay missteps. This one centers around Claire Redfield and her newer partner, Moira, who happens to be Barry Burton's daughter. They get captured and wrapped up in this whole thing with a mysterious overseer holding them hostage in like a jigsaw type of puzzle situation on an island. This was an episodic game originally, so it does have the similar previously on things, so it keeps that feel whether you like it or not. But the game flips perspectives here to Barry Burton himself, who comes to the island looking to rescue his daughter. And I'll say, while changing in perspectives in Revelations breaks up immersions a bit, Revelations 2 has one story kind of following in the footsteps of the other, with Barry's pursuit close behind Claire, actually adding little elements here and there. It's nothing huge, but still, it does feel a little backtracky at times, but I still couldn't help but just kind of find it pretty interesting. You can also switch back and forth between lesser combat, more puzzle-focused allies, and occasionally you play as them alone. It does work pretty decent on co-op, and like other Resident Evil games of this format, the co-op is pretty good, but generally, when you're playing by yourself, it kind of feels like a half step. It's like a gameplay element that doesn't really go all in or really get very fun, except for a few situations. It just gives you more busy work to do, like wait for them, use their flashlights, spot enemies, and just kind of tediously manage inventories and use them as a pack mule. There's also a stealth element, which is very basic and workmanlike. It works, but it just doesn't really do anything. As does picking up treasure and parts to upgrade your weapons and the skill tree. Like, it all just kind of is there. It just gives you something to do, but it's all pretty slight and doesn't really help much. All this stuff kind of gets in the way of what could be a more tense and scary situation, but it kind of just falls in the middle, you know? It has a couple of scary enemies and good environment partner moments, but it's an otherwise just okay Resident Evil experience. Like Revelations 1, it kind of falls into that B Resident Evil story that I still found fairly interesting, even more than Revelations 1, so it does have that going for it. But both games also come with Raid Mode, this arcade-style replayable mode that lets you keep busy with lots of things to shoot, and honestly, I think that's where the package really shines. Revelations 1 has 20 plus a bonus stage with lots of ranks and stuff to work through. The scenarios the games give you here really get incredibly challenging and satisfying, and I think it does a really, really good job for replay value. Revelations 2's Raid Mode has a bit more elements like a currency and like a hub room, and it's just so good and just addictive. The whole mode really will get you hooked if you're the right type of player for it. It has a lot of like, oh, just one more round moments that'll kind of make your free time disappear, and it definitely helps the replay value factor big time. I will say that. It definitely saves the overall package. Because in summation, Resident Evil 1 and 2 as a package is just kind of pretty middling. It ain't the worst, and I still think if you're a Resident Evil fan, you should play it. Just don't expect Game of the Year material. If you're picking it up on Switch, also know that it looks and runs very well, you know, noticeably better on handheld, but the load times on Revelations 2 are god-awful, like really bad. But other than that, it's just an okay-ish, on-the-go Resident Evil experience if you're looking for that. But that's how a Before You Buy works. You know, I give you some pros, some cons, and some personal opinion thrown in there, but now I definitely want to hear yours. How do you feel about Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2? Chances are these games have been out on so many consoles in different places, you've probably played it, at least somewhere or another, so I definitely want to know what you're thinking. If you're a big Resident Evil fan, are you down with it? Because I'm a pretty big fan, but these games just don't really quite do it for me. But I think it's still like a good little smaller experience to whet your appetite. I don't know. I'm mixed, but I want to hear from you guys. You know, clicking the like button does help us out over here, and if you haven't subscribed yet, we put out videos like this every single day. So, as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.